much like you guys, I'm sure, I grew up always wanting to be a filmmaker. Actually, my two dreams, I wanted to be a filmmaker, writer, director, producer, or I wanted to be a police officer. And my passion for, film really was, that's really what, I focused on. I was lucky enough that in my high school, we had a 16mm production class. And even before that, I was making Super 8 films. I had a piano teacher when I was like 7 years old, and I refused to practice piano, and he bribed me, and he said, well, what can we do that would make you practice? And I'm like, well, if we can make a movie, you have a movie camera? And so each week he'd bring his Super 8 camera, and as long as I practiced and I played the song, halfway decent, then we'd make a movie. And so each week that became kind of like our project. So each week I would make, a short film. I got like this black and white Akai video camera when I was a kid. And back then, this is the 70s. And so it was a reel-to-reel quarter-inch video deck. So I had to spool the video in, and it was black and white. But, so I had a lot of experience making films and making shorts, coming up. And in high school, got into 16mm production and editing. And after graduating high school, I just wanted to make movies. And I didn't really want to go to college, what like all my friends were doing. So I found Columbia College, and I was like, cool, I could kind of, maybe make my family happy and go to school, but it would be at night. But during the day, I could work on movies. And so I immediately, graduation, that summer I got a job as an assistant to the director on a horror film, and just started working, in the film industry, whether it was, as an AD or as a PA or as a assistant prop master, really whatever I could do. And at the same time, I was trying to get movies made. We produced a movie called Public Access, and we raised the money from a company in Japan, and there was a friend of the director that was a writer in New Jersey, and he was just about to start the police academy. And we're like, he called him and he said, come out, we have this company that's going to give us money to do a movie. There was this Japanese company, and they were looking for groups of filmmakers all across the world. They wanted to make 7 films from, various countries. It was kind of an experiment called Cinema Beam. And we were lucky enough, or the director was lucky enough to hook up, and they saw a short film that he did and said they wanted him to direct one of the films, but there wasn't a script. So convinced this guy in New Jersey that he grew up with to come out and to write this thing. And so he wrote it. Me and my friend that did this other project, and we grew up together, and we were actually in 16mm production in high school. We produced it, and we got it into the Sundance Film Festival, and that was amazing. And we ended up winning the Grand Jury Prize, which is the top prize there, which was awesome. The director of the film ended up Brian Singer, if you know him, and the writer that we convinced to come out was Chris McQuarrie, who ended up winning the Oscar for Usual Suspects. And after that, we just started, kind of making movies and, getting projects off the ground. And I started writing and directing TV. And, but I realized very quickly, I was, I want to write and direct. I don't just want to produce. My vision was to be a writer-director. I had an idea for a film ever since I was in high school. In elementary school in the 70s, there was this busing program. They started busing kids in from South Central LA to my elementary school in the Hollywood Hills. And all of a sudden there was like this kind of clash of cultures, like, these white kids from the Hills that had never, dealt with and interacted with kids from South Central. And at the same time, this was like 1979. I'm going into like some crazy stuff, but it was 1979, and the song Rapper's Delight came out, and where a lot of my friends were like listening to like AC/DC and like, rock music, I heard this music and I fell in love with it. And so these kids from South Central, they were listening to the same music, so we all kind of became friends. And from my experiences in South Central LA led me to this idea, like, oh man, like, what if we, that came to Game Tapes, doing this film all from kind of a kid's point of view growing up in South Central. So I was like, I saw this film called Celebration, which was one of the first Dogma movies, if you know that whole movement. But it was a film that was shot all on digital video, on a one-chip digital video camera. If you guys haven't seen Celebration, I highly recommend it. It's a great film. But that film was shot all on video and then released in theaters. And that was the first film ever that did that. And I was like, wait a minute, you could shoot a film really inexpensively on digital video and release it and get a real distribution company to put it in theaters. This is a big thing. I could go do that. So I kind of came up with this idea. from this film, this idea that took place all from the point of view of a video camera, stolen video camera. And I quickly wrote this project, and I was going to finance it just with credit cards. I was like, I'll just do it. I'll raise money, call friends, call family, and just make the movie. And I started casting. And I was at AFM. Do you guys know what AFM is, the American Film Market? Okay. So that's where a lot of films are bought and sold. And so I was at AFM, and I ran into somebody who was the president of Lionsgate, who I'd known from producing Public Access. That festival opened up all these doors, and I met tons of people. And he was like, "What are you up to?" And I kind of pitched him the movie that I was doing, and who's financing? Well, I'm going to self-finance it. I was already casting. I was going to make the movie, and he was like, "Well, that sounds like a great idea. Why doesn't Lionsgate should do that movie?" I was like, "Yeah, you should." And the pitch was, by that time, Blair Witch Project had come out and exploded. And so where Celebration was this movie shot on this digital video camera and was kind of this, artsy kind of, project, Blair Witch came out all shot on video and exploded and became obviously one of the highest grossing films ever. And so that really okay, now this is a reality. You could shoot on video and have a major theatrical release through a studio. So how I pitched it, I said it was Blair Witch in the Hood. And, that guy, it's like these pitches people want to hear, just, you got to sell them with the pitch, and so they heard Blair Witch in the Hood. And then I kind of went into the idea, and he loved it. I met with the head of production, and he loved it. And very quickly, they gave me $250,000. I didn't have a script at that point. I only had a pitch and like a one-page breakdown of the story. I started researching the film. I went to South Central. I went to Watts, and even though I had all these experiences, I wanted to see what was going on modern day, and interviewed just tons of people, as many people as I could. And then with a writing partner of mine, Stephen Wolfson, we crafted the script and wrote it, and then we cast it all out of South Central, all out of Watts, and then we brought these kids in that we cast, and I rehearsed with them for about 2 weeks. Okay, and so they took our dialogue and put it into their own vernacular so it would sound real. We shot the film in 11 days and submitted it to festivals. My dream was to go back to Sundance, and they rejected the film, which was really, really disappointing, really upsetting. But all these other film festivals picked it up, and so I got to travel around the United States. I got to travel around the world with the film, and that was awesome. And that opened up my career as a writer-director, because all of a sudden, I got a call from management companies, and they wanted to sign me, and so I signed with a management company, and then CAA, like the biggest agency in town, wanted to sign me as a writer-director, and so I signed with them, and then a lot of doors opened up. It was amazing. I kept busy for many years after that as a writer-director, pitching projects, getting them sold, writing movies, writing TV projects, selling them to networks. Nothing was really ever getting made, but still I was making my living as a writer, producer, director. And it was great. I wasn't making incredible amounts of money, but I got into the Writers Guild, and I was making their minimum, and it was an amazing thing to actually sit down and wow, people are paying me to write. People are paying me to make shit up. That's an amazing thing. A little over 3 years ago, I was like, it's time. If I could raise money and create a film fund, then I would never have to go out and convince other people to make my films or make films in general. And so I was able to raise a film fund, and the first film that we financed and that I produced is a film called Gambit, and it was written by the Coen brothers and stars Cameron Diaz and Colin Firth. And I went from making these films that were several $100,000 each to making a $30 million film, which is very, very different. It's actually, in some regards, it's easier, than making a small kind of no budget movie. And other ways, it's a lot more challenging. But that film we finished. It's been distributed all throughout the world. We're still waiting for our theatrical release in the US. I'm leaving in 2 weeks to start production on a film called Everly, and that stars Salma Hayek. And it's a contained action film that we're going to shoot in Belgrade in Serbia. Since it takes place all in one room, we could shoot it anywhere because we're going to build a set. Also have a project I've been waiting to direct my next feature film. And I have a dream project called Beat Cop. And that's a project that I had an idea about it a long time ago. And originally I started to write it with Chris McQuarrie. And when he won the Oscar for Usual Suspects, his career, just skyrocketed, and there really wasn't a lot of time for him and I to collaborate. But I wanted to make this really just as realistic possible cop film taking place in the LAPD. And so I started to research it. I started to go on ride-alongs. And I quickly found out that I wasn't going to get what I needed just riding along with cops as an outsider. So I became a cop. I found out about the LAPD has a reserve program, and it's the same testing as full-time cops, and somehow I was able to get in. And I went through the whole police academy, which took about 11 months. And I started writing the script, and everybody in town was waiting I started writing the script in like 1995. And my agents would call me, and everybody would call me, when's the script gonna be done? And 3 years went by, 5 years went by, and the script just kept on growing and growing because I was out on the streets, and I was doing it part-time, but I was working sometimes more than full-time cops. And I was out there doing the job and just kind of getting inspired. But the story started to balloon. It became like this 10-year, arc of this character, kind of like Goodfellas, like just kind of this epic in my own mind. And the script was like several hundred pages long. But everybody was so excited about it because they were like, man, this guy joined the LAPD to write this film. This is going to be a crazy project. And I said, it's going to be done when it's done, okay? And about maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago or something, just something occurred to me, and I realized what was missing or what I had to do in order to really finish the script and make it, a script that's 130 pages or 120 pages or less than that, rather than 300 pages. And so in 2 weeks, I finished the script. And I sent it to the guy that used to be my agent, that was no longer my agent. And it was incredible because nobody had read this script yet because I was keeping it very close. And this guy had been tracking it from, the very beginning. He actually came to my, police academy graduation in Chavez Ravine. And I was so nervous because I was like, man, this guy's been waiting, 14 years for the script. He's gonna, he's going to have some expectations, and I had no idea, I was very nervous. He read it in less than 24 hours, and he called me and he said, this is incredible, and he fell in love with the project, and so we kind of teamed up to make it. And then we started sending it out, and agents were really loved the script and gave it to their clients. And all these actors were reading it, and we would get these calls saying like, they loved it, but it's a really dark film, and it's really challenging, and this character goes in some places that some actors are not willing to go. But I ended up getting a call from, and I was looking first. It's kind of a young cop and an older cop, and one day just out of nowhere I got a call from. Are you guys familiar with the actor Stanley Tucci? No, he's kind of like this character actor. Oscar-level nominated guy, but got a call from him. He fell in love with the script. I sat down with him, and he's been this actor that I've kind of admired for a long time. And so now he became attached to the project. And so just casting that, and sometime, hopefully in the next year and a half, I'll make that film. But I really want it. Like the last 3 or 4 years, I've gone off on this producer thing to focus on this company. We're going to make this film within the company, but I really want to get back to what I love doing, which is, writing and directing. I never dreamt of being the business guy. I've always been the creative guy. But the past 3 years, I've really learned so much about the finance side of the movies, which is so important to know, and distribution, and, whether it's domestic or foreign. And the pre-sales business, if you guys are familiar with that term at all, pre-selling films like they do at American Film Market or Berlin or in Cannes. And really the biggest difference is on the lower budget films, you have to do everything. You know, you do everything. As you guys know, if you've made short films, or you end up doing everything, and it's tough. It's fun, But what's nice about doing a bigger, budget project is you have this enormous crew, and you're able to delegate, and you have all these incredible people that are enormously talented. So when they're in charge of something, you have faith, and they're going to get it done at the highest level. So you don't have to, but having done everything before, there sometimes, could be a want or a need to micromanage, because you kind of want to control it all, and but you have to kind of sit back and realize that you're working with these incredibly talented people. But that's the greatest thing, that you have so many people working with you and working for you, that are excited and passionate about the film that you're working on. So yeah, that definitely does make things a bit easier, rather than when you're the writer, director, producer, assistant director, casting person, camera person, craft service, catering. It's that's tough. During the writer's strike, I had a movie set up at this company called Beacon Pictures, and I had a scripted TV series that I sold to MTV. So I was writing 2 projects at the same time, and then the writer's strike hit. So all of a sudden, we couldn't do any work. So I started to, I got calls from buddies of mine, so I started to produce reality TV. So I had a couple of years that, I got into reality and really, found a love for, kind of real documentary style reality TV, like Cops. That was a lot of fun because you go out in the field with just you, a cameraman, and a sound guy, and it's like you have to deliver stories, and you have to, shoot footage, and you have to find a story, and you're out there, and in the field, you're really, writing, producing, and directing, and, using your skills as a storyteller. So that was a great experience. When I was doing indie stuff, there was a magazine called Backstage West. There's all these kind of publications where you can put out word and and I'm sure there's a million things online now that you could put out the word that you're doing a project, and you'll get, just endless, but, and you'll find talented people, but sometimes it's easier if, through friends and through people and through the school, of people who are talented, and you get to them, But being able to discover and find somebody that's really incredibly talented, and they haven't achieved any kind of recognition and success yet, and becoming, kind of a partnership with them, or, helping each other out, that's an incredible thing. Because so many people that I came up with, or so many people that, I found them, they found me, and we ended up collaborating. So many of these guys now are, working at the highest levels of the business now, and all of us still help each other out. But yeah, I mean, it's a whole different world now with the internet, which we didn't have back then. That you could find, you could find incredible amounts of people, but it's about sifting through all those submissions and finding the most talented people and having an eye for talent, and seeing their reels and meeting them in person. When I met Chris McQuarrie and we were making this movie Public Access, Public Access was the only script that I had read of his, but sitting down with him and hanging out and becoming friends with him, he was like this amazing storyteller. And I knew, I was like, man, this guy is an incredible storyteller, so he's got to be an incredible writer. Far beyond the writing that was done on Public Access, which was written very quickly. And at the time, he had very little money. He was living in a single kind of apartment, sharing it with another guy. And I approached him, I said, I'd love to pay you to write a film. And I think I paid him something like, over a course of 6 months in installments, I think I paid him something like $3,000 on a script that was never finished, and so he technically and admittedly still owes me a script, and he still tells people it's like the greatest deal that any producer has ever made, But I only bring up that story because at the time nobody was giving him money to write a script, and that guy is incredibly talented, and he's only gotten better, but he was an incredible talent then, and so. Now that he's getting paid millions of dollars, that has nothing to do with, oh my God, he's a completely different talented person today. You just have to recognize that talent and find it. We were doing probably 10-hour days on that film, but man, before that I've done, 17-hour days on projects, with very little turnaround time, to the next day, and somehow you're able to do it, and at the end of production, you just, sleep for a week or something. And all of a sudden you get sick, and everything kind of catches up with you. But it could be, you try to avoid that, but sometimes it's unavoidable, to get the film done or to get the shots that you want. And hopefully you have a crew that's, behind you and wants to stick around, because it's tough, after, a certain number of hours on set, people want to go home, And when you're younger, it's cool, but, at some point when people get older, they want to go back to their families. That's why the crew is so important in getting them motivated and getting them to kind of like you and love you and get behind what you're trying to do. And it's incredibly important to be, totally open, because nobody can do this alone. Really, I haven't seen any filmmakers that can do it all themselves. And if you look at certain filmmakers and how, as their films, like early in their career, they have this incredible body of work, but as their career goes on, the films don't hold up. The films get worse and worse. And one of the reasons for that is because at some point, early in the career, everybody will tell them what they're doing wrong, and everybody will say, that's a fucking stupid idea, man, But now they made a film that got critical acclaim, and they won an Oscar, or the movie made several $100 million. Now you're working with this guy, or you're working with new people, and they're gonna be like, well, fuck, this guy has an Oscar. This guy, his movies have made several $100 million. His movies are critically acclaimed. Who the fuck am I to criticize this guy? And so they're surrounded by yes men, yes people. And the films suffer. The films really suffer. So it's important for, for a filmmaker to be open enough to let their crew or their partners know. It's like, hey, feel free to be brutally honest. Feel free to critique. It's like, it's a collaborative process. But in the end, if you're the director, it's up to you whether to listen or not. Only one person can make the final decision. So it's incredibly important, to hear the critiques. And sometimes it's tough because sometimes, especially when you're writing and you put so much time and effort into a script and you're really proud of it, and all of a sudden somebody comes and reads it and gives you all these critiques, and deep down you know that this person is right, but you know that in order to correct the problems, that it's going to be a lot of work, And so that's where that's fucking where, the willpower, that's where, like, okay, are you going to be lazy, or are you going to go in there and do the hard work? And that's tough. And I know a lot of people, and I've worked with a lot of people that they give up and they're like, fuck it, I'm just going to make this, I'm not going to change it, And okay, not it's like, but you end up seeing the final product, and probably 9 times out of 10, it's not as good as it could have been, And you look at films today, you're like, how did that film get made? Oh my God! And you go like, you see all these like plot holes or inconsistencies, and these are big films with major stars and major filmmakers. But there's a lot of people can get that, be guilty of that lazy factor, or they just, they're pushing the film so quickly that, sometimes filmmakers don't have time to, correct the mistakes that are, clearly visible to many people. They just, keep on pushing to get it done. I like to give my editor just completely hands off, and see what they envision. Because the incredible part of post-production and working with the editor is, as a filmmaker, you have a specific vision, you have a specific idea, and the best editors that I've worked with surprise you, not in their talent, but in what they bring to a scene. I think everything, in working with the best people to me surprise, like, an actor or a production, like something you could never, think of yourself. You're like, where'd that come from? The idea of a scene or what you're trying to do with a scene, like all of a sudden the editor will do something or change something that takes the scene to another level or changes the meaning. And you're like, man, that's not what I intended, but man, this is even better than I intended, you know? It's like one moment I can remember, this was not with an editor, but with an actor, but the same thing applies, is we were shooting the scene in Gang Tapes where I don't know, have you guys seen this movie before? No? Yeah? Doesn't matter. There's this home invasion robbery, okay? And they're there to get money. And one of the